What is creative industries? Before I'm going to tell you what it is, let me just very quickly tell you why is everybody talking about creative industries? Everyone in Europe, everyone in the world. If you look at the policies of the governments, if you look what European ministers of culture or economy are talking about, how many conferences and seminars and trainings and books and training programs in universities have been dedicated for this. So the question is, why everybody is suddenly talking about creative industries? Is that something new? Was it invented yesterday? So day before yesterday there was no creativity, and today there is. Yeah? So if you allow me, I think I do have only a few slides. You know, I'm going to maybe show some of them during my answers. But a couple of slides I would like to show you. One is from a very good friend of mine, and he's one of the leading professors in the world for creative economy, and that's from Italy, Pierluigi Sacco. And he has, with his colleagues, looked at how and the role of culture and creativity and the interaction between business, power, and culture has changed over the centuries. And he found out that if you simplify things, you can come up with three main stages. So let me tell you about these stages. So what he calls the very first stage, it's called Culture 1.0. Everybody likes to call everybody 1.0 and 2.0. So Culture 1.0, and we all know what this was. This was, you know, if you think back to the, you know, medieval times, you know, 15, 16, 1700s, even Venice and Dodges and the kings and the dukes. How did culture survive back then? You need, and every artist needed to have a patron, a rich, either a powerful man, a king, or a businessman who funded the art. So what it meant was that art and culture was for very few. It was a very elitist thing, and who decided what became known, or let's call it today terms, what became famous and what didn't? Who decided? Who decided what will be seen by the people and what will not be seen? The one that paid. Simple. Yeah. The king, the duke, the prince, the rich man. Yeah? So they ordered the art, they ordered the music. Is that past? Is this history? Well, if you start to think about this and the next stages as well, you will see that we have still elements present in each of those stages. So for example, even though I worked probably as a punishment, I was asked to be for a couple of years a state secretary for the fine arts. So I was responsible for the ballet and opera and music and literature, and after I've been 6 years talking about business and development, it was like a punishment. But what is interesting is that often, for example, opera or ballet is also seen as a product of this culture 1.0. Nobody needs it. I'm provoking now. Yeah, nobody goes to opera, but my money is used to pay for it. My money, your money, public money. So it's kind of like state knows what it needs to support, even if the people don't go there. That's kind of a thinking, but as I said, this is a provoking idea. So culture 2.0. Now think about, I'm not even talking about Gutenberg and the printing press, but let's talk about, let's say 100, 150 years ago, even 100 years ago, when suddenly mass production technologies became vast. So suddenly we were able to print books in millions. We were able to send information via telegraphs and the radio and you start layer by layer the television. So suddenly what it meant was that there became a thing that was not known before, and that was a mass consumption of culture. Culture went to the masses. Before that, in 1800s, if you wanted to hear Johann Strauss waltz, how was that possible? How was that possible? Only one way. You had to physically be present where actual orchestra played it. That's it. Now suddenly you can listen to it on radio, watch it on television, you can buy the record, you can buy the notes, you know, you can enjoy this anywhere, any place. And it seems that we are now moving already from this culture 2.0 to something else. Okay? So if you look at this culture 2.0, cultures in the masses, is that happening at the moment in the world? What do you think? Yes? Yeah. So you would say yes. So that we are now in culture 2.0. You're right? Yeah. No.
Why not? We're in between. Somewhere in between.
20 years ago, culture was in masses, yes? Very good. Who decided who is going to be the next superstar? Madonna, Britney Spears. Who decided who's going to be the next Britney Spears?
Companies which
exactly.
broadcast.
If you would answer me, we did, because we liked the music and we listened. Bullshit, doesn't happen like this. Somebody decided. So there were the companies, the label. So yes, the consumption was in the masses. So we all used, but the decision makers, how do you get to the masses, was still very, very limited. Yeah? And that is why we are now talking about culture 3.0. You needed one critical thing to step into culture 3.0. What was that? What did we need from culture 2.0 to step into culture 3.0? What did we need to take down those barriers? The new technologies, internet, yeah? Mass media in that sense, Facebooks and YouTubes, etc. Suddenly, I think I've never heard a single song of him, but you know, I know that he exists. Justin Bieber, yes? I almost said Jason Bieber. And Justin Bieber, how did we find Justin Bieber? Did you know? Do you know? How was Justin Bieber, how did he become famous? So in culture 2.0, there would have been a manager a label who had found him, developed him, invested, you know, a lot of money, made promotional campaigns, made a lot, you know how it. Suddenly, Justin Bieber didn't go through all of that. How did Justin Bieber got to that?
On the TV show. YouTube. No?
Not even that. YouTube. Simple YouTube homemade camera video. That's it. Suddenly, more people in those labels and these music companies are not working in going from, there's no point of you sending your CD anymore. You know, like usually everybody sent, like they received 1,000 CDs universal, 1,000 CDs every day. No, pointless, nobody listens to them. What they do is that they basically browse web, look at my, Facebooks, YouTubes, all these Spotifys nowadays, and looks where do people click, where do they like, what do they download, etc. And that's your next. So what does it mean now? It means first of all that it's a much more democratic culture. Yeah. Suddenly, and that's very, very good also for countries like ours. Whether it's because we are so small, Estonia has 1 million people, we would never ever be able to go anywhere. Any of our artists or musicians, anything. But suddenly, you don't have to live in London. You don't have to have friends. You could be the next internet super hit from anywhere. Yeah? So that helps countries like ours or with countries like Ukraine without such a established music industry field, for example. So I think that's very important to understand that suddenly we don't talk about simply culture as business, but we talk about life or the world where everybody are at the same time consumers and creators. To be almost professional level music producer nowadays, it has never in the world history been so easy and cheap and accessible. Never in world's history. It has never been so easy to be the almost professional movie maker. What do you need to make movies nowadays? Yeah? Almost all our cameras in our pockets make almost, or buy a bit more expensive camera. You don't need a life savings. You don't need $100,000 worth of camera. Yeah? You need almost professional, semi-professional editing software. Look, every Apple comes with this. Yeah? So suddenly it is much more accessible area. Another thing I like to talk about why we are where we are at the moment and why everybody talks about creativity so much is that this is Thomas Sedlacek. He's a Czech economist, and he once went through these different phases that the world has come through, and he asked a simple question: who became rich at different times of history? Who possessed potential to become rich? And he said, well, the very first thing when we go back in the history, who was rich? What did you have to be rich and powerful? What did you have to have? You needed to have land. You needed to have resources. So basically, if you were sitting on top of gold or fur or mine, you were rich. If you didn't have that, you were poor. Now, of course, this went through very quickly, and much of the resources were, destroyed anyway very quickly. So suddenly, from mining things, the next source of richness was making things. We go to Industrial Revolution. Who became rich? Those who managed to grab what others had and put it and make things from it. We go back to US and UK and France and Germany and other countries like this. But we're not there at the moment. So we have gone through many other things. Soon making things, that was a dirty thing. It was a lot of pollution, and you needed a lot of, people, and it was not very cost effective, we would talk now. So suddenly who became rich? Those who serviced things. Suddenly we talk about, banking services or, the emergence of new commercial centers. Suddenly the richest places like London and New York and Paris and other places in the world didn't have anything. They didn't do anything. But suddenly they are still the richest. We are not completely away from there. We are still somewhere there. Servicing is still important. But we are going more and more quickly through these phases. Yeah? And we are building layer on top of the layer. Suddenly from making things, what became more important was things. What we think with our heads. The solutions, the kind of innovations that we came up with. Those countries and regions and cities who could be quicker in coming up with the new things in the markets were those that were successful. And those that were stuck with the old, they were stuck in the old and lost its competitiveness. Suddenly, and now we're getting very close to where we are now, even more important than always thinking up new things, innovating in a way of kind of things and product development, suddenly it was about brings. We needed to bring people together. It was suddenly all about communication, about the internet. So we needed to bring new content. So everybody talked about content industry. We needed to provide you new content. We wanted new content all the time. The appetite for always new content online is thriving us. If you think about YouTube, Facebook, and all of these, they don't have any content. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, the biggest companies in the world don't make anything. They don't even put anything inside it. They simply give us white paper for you to write on it. Yeah? That's what we call this complete. And you know, if you start from the very beginning, very early, these kind of things, and it's difficult to understand. How can you become the world leading company by not doing anything and not even providing anything else but you to talk to each other? 50 years, if somebody would tell that this is going to happen, they would send you to an institution. And even step further when we talk about this, we see that more and more these non-things, things are rational. Things, ideas, solutions, innovations, they're rational. But non-things is this irrational layer. I look at one designer. Designers know that, you know. The role of design and emotions and feelings and you know, why do people buy so much crap that they don't need? Why do they do this? There's nothing to do with rationality. It's irrational. It's how it makes us feel. And it seems that we have as a maybe Western world or civilization moved to this place where you can make so much money out of these things. That is, I think, why so many people are talking about creativity more than ever before. The role of creativity in economy, and not only when I mentioned economy, it's not only about money. It's about our society. It's about education. It's about social revolutions in history. Then what are we talking about? So there is a definition that most of the countries use. That's on board. This is used by the Department of Culture, Media and Sports in UK. They usually bring this up. And they say that the creative industries are those industries which have their origin in individual creativity, skill and talent, which have potential of job and growth, and they generate and exploit intellectual property. Sounds simple? Well, if you read this very, very thoroughly, you understand that you can put almost everything into it. That doesn't really help us. Usually then we bring this more simple explanation. How we, in Europe, in the European Union, how do we understand creative industries? In the very heart of culture creative industries, in the very heart, it's called the core art fields. And this is for everyone in the room that represents pure art, that hates business, that thinks that money is dirty, and that thinks that the words culture and business should never be put in the same sentence. If you have these people in the room, I worked with these people, I respect these people need to understand, and everybody needs to understand, that they are part of culture that has intrinsic value. You know what the word intrinsic means in English? Intrinsic means something that is self-evident, that you don't need to explain. Yeah? So if I say it's intrinsically clear, it means that it's clear in itself. They are part of culture that should never ever be measured with money or valued with profit. And why it's in the heart of in the core of these circles? Because this is where the creative potential starts. Most of the creative people are educated from these classical arts, let's call it that way. This is how we, as a society, become more cultural. And this is where the values are being built. So if you find somebody who talks that culture industry is only about making money and business, they are only looking at the very narrow side of it. But anyway, on top of that, in these areas like visual arts, performing arts, cultural heritage, museums, by the way, there's huge money going in these areas as well. I mean, bring a couple of examples. Cirque du Soleil, performing art, yeah? Contemporary dance, circus, mixture, big business. Big business. Business as usual. Huh? The big biggest visual artist, you know, how much do they earn? You know, Jeff Koons, or how much do they earn in US? They are the millions. Hundreds of millions. Yeah? So it can be also money, but it doesn't have to be. And then the next two layers are what we call in Europe as culture and creative industries. Culture and creative industries. It is a compromise between UK and France. Yeah? Because in UK, culture, creative industries mean both. The one word, creative industries, means both. And in France, culture industries means also both. It's simply that, you know, French are more conservative. They don't want to be called some of the things creative. And in UK they are more upfront. Anyway, that is a definition that we call culture creative. So what's the difference between the two? There is one small difference. The difference is that culture industries are those industries, by definition. If you think about, you put something in, you get something out, yes? You put culture in, you put creative thoughts in. What comes out is culture. If what comes out is culture, then it's a culture industry. So let me bring you an example. You write the book. You write the book. Writer puts a lot of creative energy. Out comes a book. Is a book culture or not? Yes? So literature and publishing is culture industry. Film. Is film culture or not?
Yes.
Yes. So film is a culture industry. A designer makes a stool, a chair, puts a lot of creative thought into it, makes a fantastic chair, out comes a chair. Is a chair culture or not?
Yes, if it's from Scandinavia, yes.
If there's thousands of chairs, maybe.
Yeah, just in terms of the clarity of definition, advertisement is a very good example. Advertisement. Advertisement is creative industry. Why? You need designers, musicians, artists, whole bunch of creative people to make a commercial. Does anyone in the room think that at advertisement, you know, 10th minute between the movie in the evening is culture? Yeah? So yeah, that's me. And then the last, just to finish this definitional part, and the last part is the last round is creative economy. Now, what is the difference between creative industries and creative economy? It's very simple. Creative economy is how all the culture and creative sectors, like all the rest, the core and the culture and the creative industry, how they communicate and interact with other parts of society and industries. Okay? So let me bring you an example. If a car manufacturer invests lots into design to produce high value, high design, high level of design cars, then this is considered part of creative economy. For two examples, that two car companies were basically saved from extinction by fantastic design, investment into design. They were Skoda and Kia. If you think about Skoda and Kia 15 years ago, would anyone want to sit into one of them? They were the sign of a label of a cheap, poor, bad quality cars. Look at them now. If we bring the role of museum. Museum is part of economic system. Why? Because people are working there, they get salaries, tickets are sold, you know, there's money, it's economy. Is museum a business? Well, most of it. Should a museum be a business? Well, you can debate, and there are different museums, but in my view, it shouldn't. Museum is museum. So does that mean that it's not important? That's not even part of this creative industries and creative business debate? Absolutely wrong. Because a fantastically working museum has huge impact on a local economy. Tourism, understandable. The role of restaurants that feed from there, shops, restaurants, bus companies, train companies, etc., etc. Yeah? We found out that in Estonia, almost 12% of all the companies are working in those sectors. That's incredibly big number for a small country. If you take 100 companies in a row, put it sitting here, 10 or 12 of them would be from these sectors. We found out that around 5% of all the people employed in Estonia are employed in those sectors. So we took these numbers back to our government and we said, listen, when you thought that culture is ballet and theater and nice, you know, with a cocktail and opening a nice gallery, I love this, was my favorite part of my job as a state secretary for the arts, opening galleries with champagne. Then actually it means jobs for so many people. And they started to think much more. So first of all, the answer is you need to give data, you need to prove, you need arguments, not only, you know, because culture people often, and now I'm provoking a bit, are they think that they are so important what they do, that they don't really argument. They simply say, we are important. Culture is about identity. And I think everyone who's in this room, you're here because you believe that creativity is important. I think so. So we don't need to be, you know, convince each other. You know, I know. But I think that for those who are outside of the room, it's not useful to kind of hit yourself against the chest and say, you know, I talk the way I do and it's their problem. I think it is your responsibility to talk in the language that the others would understand. So this is the language that politicians, economists, financial departments would understand. But let me bring you a couple of more examples that I find extremely... I bring you two examples, if you allow me. Two examples that I find very inspiring. The role and the power of culture creativity. Sorry for those who already seen these pictures in my previous meetings. What do we see on the picture? Asthma, yes. In asthma everywhere in the developed world, asthma is becoming more and more a serious problem. This project that I'm telling you about is from UK. You can even, in YouTube, you can find videos about it and learn more about it. And they see that the number of asthma, especially in case of children, is growing rapidly. And they also found out that the number of children ending up in hospital with serious asthma attacks is growing very quickly. What they also found out was that 3/4, so 75% of the cases when a child ended up in a hospital with asthma attack, serious asthma attack, could have easily been prevented if they would know how to inhale the drug. So there's a problem. Children do not know how to inhale it correctly. You need to do it enough, you know, with enough deep, etc. I haven't ever tried this, but you know, I think I understand how it works. So what can you do? Training of millions of children, or you know, it doesn't work, or they spent a lot of money. They put teams of medical engineers to see what can be done with the machine. What can be done? Maybe it can be innovation in the machine. Worked for a couple of years, didn't work, or maybe would have, but it was too expensive. Then they thought maybe we will put more drug in it, like stronger drug. But then those who take it correctly get too much of a dose. So so what can you do? What can you do? You can spend a lot of money and time to innovate the machinery, but it doesn't necessarily work. The answer is here. They came up with a thing called a T-hailer. T like T-shirt. T-hailer. And what is it? It's not a hailer, it's not a new machine. It is a practice machine that is at your doctor's office. They brought together the doctors, medical engineers, children, parents, designers, IT developers, artists, you know, really a creative bunch of people, and say, can you come up with something? And they asked simple question. if there's a problem of children paying attention and really learning something, what do they actually pay attention to? What is the thing that children are perfect at? Playing games. The way that they can play computer. My 3-year-old nephew is like a playing machine. I couldn't even move my hand. So of course you need to make it a game. So this is the T-hailer that is connected, with a Bluetooth, with a computer screen, with a game. The game is extremely simple. It's not a very difficult. It's a golf. It's a golf game. It's a ball. There's a hole. You need to get the ball into the hole. How you get it there? You need to inhale correctly. If you inhale not enough, the ball stops in the middle way. If you inhale too much, the ball goes away. If you do some other moves, it goes this and that. Yeah. So you are sitting there with your child, and he tries to inhale it as long as it starts to go in correctly many times in a row. For him, it's a game. He wins. Yes, I won. And by the way, he doesn't even understand that he actually knows how to inhale correctly your drug. I think this is a power of creativity. Yeah? You need to come out of the, well, telling that something you need to come out of the box is already an uncreative thing to say. But you need to think completely differently to the solutions. The other medical experience, and why two medical experiences I want to bring, because that's usually, we don't talk about it. We talk about museums and tourism, yeah? We talk about education and we talk about everything, but medical, what can we do? And when you talk about medical and creativity, you usually talk about clowns in the children's hospital, making them happy. And this is, I would freak out, but it's important. I'm not saying it's not, but that's not it. That's not all. There's so much more. So another an example, and that's the last one from this I want to bring, is from the oldest and the most famous children's hospital in the world, which is the London Great Ormond Street Hospital. Maybe you've heard of this hospital in books or films. The problem with this hospital was that the most difficult part, the most dangerous part in this hospital life, in the value chain of where the patient lives, is when the patient comes in with an ambulance and is put in the emergency room. And then the very first things are done with the extra difficult patient in the emergency room. And then from the emergency room, the patient is handed over to intensive care. Okay? Simple enough. Yeah? So patient comes in, emergency, quickly something, and then to the intensive care. There are so many things that can go wrong in this handing over process. And what happened in this hospital was that the amount of accidents was much higher in that hospital than in the national average. There were more accidents. Accidents meaning, like plane accidents, not always crashing, but, some extra illness, some inflammation, something, might have gone wrong, which would have been prevented. Also deaths. So they tried many things. They had many years of projects. They had medical experts looking and trying to see what happened. They did many changes in trying to find. Nothing worked. They were still much lower or higher than the national average in the number of accidents between them. And now maybe it's more romantic story. Maybe it's more pragmatic than that. But the way it has been written and discussed in the newspapers is like this. So there was two men, the head doctor of the hospital and the director of this emergency room, like the head of the. And they were one weekend on this. You have to be on a guard. Yeah. So they were the guarding doctors waiting for patients to come in. And they didn't have anything to do at that moment, and where they were at the television, and watching something it was a Sunday, and watching something from television. They watched the television, And suddenly one man looks to another, the other one looks back and says, doesn't this what we just what we are looking, doesn't this remind you of something? And the other one says, actually now when you mention it does. And they understood that the solution to their problem might be in what they are watching. So they called to the people that they were watching right away. They got answer. These people were very, very interested to join in. They had a 6 months project. And after this project, after implementing those changes, the number of accidents fell much below the national average. So it became one of the role model hospitals in that regards, instead of being one of the worst ones. What am I talking about? Yeah, you know, don't, yeah, Rasta. What am I talking about? What were they watching? The hint is on Sunday. Watch what my papers. It's clever. No? Well, it can be a debate if it's sports, if it's culture, but I put it in here as example. So isn't the pit stop very similar to what they have to do? You have 10 professionals with extremely short time, performing extremely difficult roles. Many things can go wrong. Technical, mechanical, electrical, etc. That was the answer. Yeah. Ferrari and McLaren team, 2 of them, worked with Graham Ormond Street Hospital for 6 months. They found out actually what's interesting. They put videos. What they did is they brought the doctors to the pit stops. And they took the pit stop engineers to their hospital. They videotaped. They found out 2 things basically. Firstly, they found out that what was missing in hospital was that in a hospital room, in this very difficult situation, every doctor is a god. Every doctor has its own thing to do. They're the world best in that thing, but like most of the problems in the world are communication problems. There was no one to coordinate between them. So anesthesiologists and the other doctors all did their part, but never really talked. So they made this kind of a checklist. Yeah. And secondly, the most important guy, by the way, you don't even know this, but one of the most important guys in Formula 1 is actually, you know what is a lollipop man? Lollipop man. How is lollipop in Ukrainian? Jedinets. Ledinets. Ledinets Mushina. Yes, exactly. The guy with this lollipop looking thing, you know, who says, you don't move, and if everything is ready, only then when he turns it, go. You can go. So basically, he's the coordinator. He looks that everything needs to be in order. He's the god. He doesn't do anything. He's the god. So what was missing in that hospital room was that lollipop man who oversees, who takes this responsibility. Anyway, I could continue with these stories, but I think the power, the real hidden power of culture, creativity, of artists, designers, young people especially, with fresh ideas, with musicians, with graffiti artists, with those who go and, you know, flock the old garages and old factories. The power of these people is much bigger than what politicians and economists often would like to think. But if you take one thing away from this 1.5 hours today and you leave, then let it be this. Whenever you hear somebody telling you how big percentage is creative industries in their country, like how big is this, how much it earns, Never ever think that this is absolute truth. Okay? Why is this? Because of something I mentioned in the very beginning, the very first sentence I said, almost the second sentence. I said, there is no common definition of creative industries in Europe. Full stop. Because there is no common definition, every country puts something else in it. So when UK says, London by the way says, that in London creative industries is 10% of the economy.
But they put quite a lot in it.
Oh, absolutely.
IT services.
Absolutely. They put, yeah. Absolutely.
Quite a lot of things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They put a lot of things in it. And I'm not saying UK is one of the best cases in Europe. In UK and in London, especially in the London region, they earn probably the most because they are global markets. For sure. But simply, if you ever see that a Brit says to you that in our country it's 10%, and then I don't know, in Finland they tell you that it's 5%, then it's not that Finland has twice less share than UK. It means that in Finland they don't add many things into it. Very simple example that I can bring you is that in many countries in Europe, also in Estonia, we only include in this definition entertainment IT, meaning that part of the IT that makes games, video games, console games, game apps, or gambling games, online games, etc. Games. Some other countries put also some communication software in, and in some countries all software is put in. Now, as you know, what's the most famous product of Estonia? Do you know? What's the most famous product of Estonia? Skype. Brilliant. So if Estonia would put all that Skype earns in Estonia as part of our economy, I wouldn't tell you 3%, I would tell you 13%, but we don't. Why culture creative industries, why culture creative businesses and entrepreneurs and professionals and artists are so incredibly important is most of all its innovative power. They have power to change and add value to many, many other areas of life. And that is actually the most important thing. I mean, probably you've read, seen some fantastic TED Talks or video talks online. Ken Robinson talking about the role of culture and creativity in education, for example, that we need to educate our people more. Like the problem with Estonian education system and your education system here, all the post-Soviet education system, is that we are the smartest children in the world.
Yes.
But we know nothing, we don't know what to do with it. Yeah? We're the smartest. When I started, I saw that myself. When I was, like I'm very old now, but 15 years ago, I was involved in this kind of a movement called the European Youth Parliament. We took the best students from our schools to Europe, where all the best students from Europe got together. We are the best. You know, Estonia is the second best in PISA test after Finland of results. We are the best of the best students. I take them there. They're there with these stupid students, yeah, from other countries. Yeah? What happens? Everybody talks except Estonians and Finns. Everybody takes floor, they argue, they get selected, elected, voted, they climb up, and Estonians and Finns, they're like you know how you make how to make a difference between an extroverted Finn and introverted Finnish person. You know the difference? If the two meet, if the extroverted and introverted Finnish people meet, at the party, the cocktail party, then the introverted Finn only looks at his own shoes. The extroverted Finn looks at the other person's shoes. So that's the way it is. But this is not only the way we are, like it is communication skills, but it's also about application of those skills. Creativity is also about being ready to make mistakes, yes? Not always being right. And we don't do this. And the same problem with the Ukrainian school system. They are smart, but book smart. They know, but they know what the teacher tells them to know. So that is something important. I'm not going to go into much deeper with this. But not only, there's a couple of things that I find myself very, very passionate about. This is two non-related statistics. So the left and the right has nothing to do with each other. Yes? And this is put together by Pierluigi Sacco, the professor I mentioned you before. And look at this. This is incredibly interesting. On the left side, you see the innovation scoreboard of European countries. It's an old statistic, but it makes the point. 2008. This is all the innovation indicators, all about business and R&D and investment into innovation processes. Yeah? Nothing to do with culture. No indicator is the same as the right side. Look at the right side. Cultural participation index. Basically, they ask from people, how often have you taken part of any form of cultural activity in the past 12 months? Yeah? Sweden is Europe's first. Estonia, I think, is second. Look at this too. Isn't that incredible what you see there? Isn't it? The 5 countries that have the lowest level of cultural participation, that people don't read enough or go to theaters or concerts or dance or whatever, are also the countries with the lowest innovation scores, are also the same countries that are in big trouble the last 5-6 years. There is not enough research to make a conclusion. The professor and I couldn't say, oh, by the way, because of this now culture... No, we don't know. Simply to make you think that it is just too big of a coincidence. Okay? I don't know, maybe you think otherwise. All the European countries at the moment are thinking about culture policies and renewing the culture policies. He said if you look at the culture policy of the 21st century of any European country, you find out that it's not a culture policy anymore. It is a creative industries policy. It tells, for example, how, like I was mentioning, what is the role of culture for tourism, what the role of culture for education, what's the role of culture for business, economic innovation and growth, what's the role of... And none of the documents exist in this country which would link culture with other areas. And as long as culture is when we said that it looks like everybody looks at it that it's something and only cost us something small, but not only that, they look at this something. It's a silo. It's a thing of its own. And what we are saying is that culture should be connected with other areas as well. And in addition to that, we need to understand that culture does not stop with ballet, opera and museum.